Hi everyone. So starting this week, we're going to be moving over to working with Python, which is a great programming language to start with, and which gives us the ability to do the next stage in our data analysis, which is that it allows us to do many of the same things that we can do in OpenRefine, really all of the same things that we can do in OpenRefine, except it lets us do it on much larger data sets. So whereas in OpenRefine, we've been able to do things like regular expressions and faceting and filtering and all of that, but we've had to work on a subset of our original data set, 100,000 rows or so at a time. Python is powerful enough that it can actually do that work on the entire data set all at once, really in a matter of seconds. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and so we're going to see what we can do with it. Now, we're working in a program here called Aptana Studio 3. Which is really just a text editor. Again, all programs are just text, but they are text that's designed to be interpreted in the computer in a special way, by the computer in a special way, so that they can do lots of powerful things that our regular text files can't. So when I open up Aptana Studio 3, this is going to be the first thing I get. It's going to say, where do you want to put your stuff? I'm going to come to the desktop here and create a new folder and call it Python scripts. Okay. Hit OK. You can see it just made that folder up there. And I just choose OK, and it's going to get loaded up here. Okay. There's a couple of errors that might come up in the beginning. Don't worry about it. Just click through them. I'm going to X out of this start page, which is kind of annoying anyway. And you can see that on the left-hand side here, it says local file system. That's, of course, just my computer files. I'm going to go to desktop, and I'm going to go to Python scripts. And I'm just going to right-click on this, and I'm going to say I want to create a new file. So as we've discussed at length this semester, file extensions are just an indicator to the operating system, to the computer, about what kind of program should be used to run or open a file. In this case, for Python scripts, that file extension is .py. And so I'm going to click Finish. And it's going to go and open this up, and it says here, oh, the Python interpreter isn't configured, right? So again, Python is a programming language. It needs an interpreter. So I'm going to choose Advanced Auto Config. You just want to make sure you choose the version of Python that starts with 3 rather than 2. Everything here looks good because it all begins with 3. I just click OK. You should only hopefully have to do this once, like the first time you run Aptana on a particular computer, but obviously it's not too big a deal to do if you need to. Okay, so I'm now just going to take a second and set my preferences so that my font. Okay, and now that my font is a little bit larger, so hopefully you'll be able to see it pretty well, I'm going to get started on my file. Now, Python isn't the kind of tool that we come to right away. It's something that we come to after we know a little bit about what we're trying to do. So for example, in our case, where we've gone through OpenRefine and we've said, hey, I just want to look at this one particular start station, right? Once we have kind of identified that as the task we're trying to complete, that's when we would come to Python and create a program, right? We're going to write a program that will actually do that task, in this case, filtering for a particular start station ID, on the entire data set. So because of that, whereas in the past what we've been doing is we've been kind of making selections in our files and keeping a process log, when we work with Python, we're actually going to do it in reverse. What we're going to do is we're going to write an outline at the top of our file of what we want to accomplish with the program that we're writing, and then we're going to use that as a guide as we're actually writing the program itself. So because our outline is going to be written in plain English rather than in code, which is part of how we keep it accessible, right? As we need to indicate to the computer that it shouldn't interpret those lines as code, but rather just ignore them. In order to do that in Python, we start it with a hashtag or a pound sign. And I'm just going to go through the steps here. So what I want to do is I'm going to say I want to open up. Well, first I need to do, I'm going to import required CSV library. We'll talk about that in just a minute, what that does. And then I'm going to say I need to open my source data file, and I'm going to actually write in here the name of the file. So I'm going to say, so I can select this. And I'm going to copy and paste this right in. So just the same way that you would put the link in, I could put the URL in here too. I'm going to open my source data file. Let's see, the next thing that I want to do is I want to create a new file to write my results to. I want to go through source file line by line, and maybe I'll call this 4A, right? 4A, if the start station ID is the one I'm looking for, write it to my file, and then I don't have to do anything with the ones that I don't want. And then otherwise I think I just need to close the file. Close all my files. Okay, so pretty simple set of steps there. And so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say import CSV. Now, how did I know about this? Well, the answer is research. So obviously I've worked with this before. Python as a language has a lot of really useful libraries written. So libraries are just code recipes. So they're books of code basically that people have written that can provide that basically help us do our work a little bit faster and more easily. So in this case, there's a great library that is designed specifically, has a lot of recipes for dealing with CSV files. And so that means that we can take advantage of those to get some work done that otherwise would be very tedious to do ourselves. So in this case, we're just going to say, look, open up that library that has all of these recipes for all of these code recipes for dealing with CSV files. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go to, and that's step one, right? So step two is going to be open my source data file. So the first thing I want to do is I want to actually move my data file into the same folder where my Python script is. It doesn't have to be in the same folder, it's just a little bit easier to deal with it that way. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, my source file, okay, I'm labeling, I'm creating a label, and I'm telling the computer what should go in there, or what it's pointing to. And in this case, I'm saying open, and the thing that I want to open, of course, is my CSV file, right? I know that. Okay, and then I'm going to give it, and then I'm going to say RU. Okay, so what's going on here? So I'm going to say open data file to read, label it source file. Okay, so open, again, is another one of these recipes that is actually, that's built into Python itself, right? So even if we didn't have this import CSV, we'd still be able to use it. But basically, when we open a file, we have to tell the computer, because this is sort of a low-level program, right? It's not like a Microsoft Word or even TextEdit. We have to say, look, what do you want? We have to tell the computer what we want to do with that file. Do we want to look at it? Do we want to add content to it? And so in our case, what we end up doing is we end up opening the file and telling it that we want to be reading from it. Okay, so again, you'll notice that we have our round parentheses here, that all of our ingredients for this open function go between those parentheses. They're separated by a comma. And so the first ingredient is what's the file that I want to get, and the second ingredient is what do I want to do with that file. In this case, this parameter is R, and then the U is for universal. We can talk about that in class. It's not really important. You can just know that you need to put in RU. Okay, so I've opened that file as far as I know, right? I've put in my code for this, and you can see I've actually labeled, and this is what I do, is each line of code, above it, I put an explanation of what that line or section of code is doing. So I've opened that source file. Oh, in this case, I want to create a new file to write my results to. So I'm going to say output file equals, and in this case, I can just say, well, what do I want to call this? I'm going to call this filtered station results. And mine is also going to be a CSV file, so I'm going to say that. But in this case, I'm not going to be reading from the file, I'm going to be writing to it. And so that's why we have the W. So I'm going to say create output file to write my results to. Okay, so doing pretty well here. I've already got steps 1 through 3. Now the question is, how am I going to go through my source file line by line? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to use one of the built-in methods from that CSV library to interpret my source file, which I've opened and labeled source file here, to interpret it in a special way. And basically what I'm saying is interpret this specifically as a CSV file. And so I'm going to create another variable here called CityBikeReader. Okay, and I'm going to say CSV, and I put in the CSV because I'm saying go to the CSV library, right? I'm directing the program to the CSV library, and I'm going to use a method called dict, as in dictionary reader. This error you can just ignore. If you hit escape, it'll go away. It's a bug with the program. Won't affect what we're doing, but it is kind of annoying, I acknowledge. And so I'm going to say, look, I want to create a dict reader, and what am I interpreting? What am I converting to this dictionary? Is going to be source file. Okay, so it's the thing that I opened and put my CSV contents into. Okay, so now I have this reader. So one of the reasons why I bothered to do that is because, again, that dictionary reader, that dict reader function, when it looks at the CSV file that I've opened up at source file here, when it looks at that, it has its own built-in recipes, again, that can give me some really useful information. So for example, it has something called field names. It automatically interprets when I say create a dict reader with source file, the material that's in source file, it locates my column headers for me automatically, and puts them into and calls them and labels them field names. And so I can test this right away by saying, by actually using a print statement. And in the print statement, I'm going to say, give me CityBikeReader.field names. Okay, so the way that we're saying go to CityBikeReader, which has within it the contents of creating a dictionary reader from source file, and tell me what the field names are. And if this has worked properly, then hopefully it's going to spit out a line that shows me the column headers from my original data set, right, from the CityBike trip data CSV. So how do I actually run this and take a look at it? Well, you'll see down here in the middle tab, it's got that little black square. That's a terminal prompt. By default, this is going to be wherever your username is. So for most of us, what we're going to do is we're going to type CD, and then, which means change directory. And then we're going to start typing in desktop. And actually, if you just put in, if you just start typing it and hit tab, it'll complete it for you automatically. And so LS stands for list, and that's going to show me my Python scripts folder. So again, I can see that Python scripts folder right here on my desktop, right? It's just another way of navigating through my computer. I can do it from, they call this the command prompt or terminal. Okay, so I'm going to do another CD, change directory. Directory is another word for folder, into Python scripts. And again, I just hit tab to make that autocomplete. And now within Python scripts, I'm going to do another list, and it's going to show me what's in there. And so to actually run this file, I am going to type, hang on, I realize this just ran off the screen here. I'm going to type, I'm going to type Python 3, and then the name of my Python file. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. It was a little window sizing there. And so when I hit enter, you can see that because I told it to print, it has actually successfully found the column headers from my CSV file, right? So this is great. This is actually like a pretty, we've done about half of what we set out to do. And certain parts of it are going to be super easy, like closing all my files. So what you can see here is that with just a very little bit of code, just a few lines of code, really, we have already managed to pull in our data source, look at the column headers, and the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at how we go through that row by row and filter out for a specific start station ID.